If you remember previously, we've talked about Romance Con. I have 2 videos on that. One talking about the initial call to boycott, and the second talking about the refund drama going on after the boycott started. This is part 3, and we're going to talk about Romance Con as it actually happened. My name is Taylor Rose, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about everything reading and writing. Romance Con took place September 5th through 6th of this year, 2025. And people are wondering, you didn't give anyone refunds. Where did the money go? Where did the money go? Brooke Emanuel saying, just a heads up, the Romance Con swag bag is just a tiny bag with a sheet of stickers. Barely any authors remaining and only a few vendor tables. So you'd think the bag would actually be worth it. Because, you know, the $200 ticket price and all. Such a joke. I'm scared to ever buy a ticket for a convention again. Emma B's library says, no freaking way. There were 3 books last year. Brooke responds, I was expecting a book or even a t-shirt, but no, they have the audacity to charge $30 for a shirt and $55 for a hoodie around the corner from where you pick up your swag bag. Coven Creations 312 says, I was supposed to be a vendor and dropped out due to everything and no response about a refund. My booth fee was $400. And Brooke says, that is awful. I'm so sorry. They have all of our money elsewhere because it definitely wasn't put into the event. Bookmarked TBR said, has anyone started a class action against Romance Con? I've been going back and forth with my bank and the justifications they're using to not refund are beyond ridiculous. Christian Beverly says, agreed. If someone is, I'd love to be a part of it. I was just denied for tickets being non-refundable. Bookmarked said, I would be willing to do a lot of research, etc. Just don't have any law knowledge. Their latest is that they said authors were subject to change. Like babes, having authors swap in and out is one thing. Going from 200 to 30 is another entirely. So if you haven't watched my previous videos detailing what went on, essentially, Romance Con started with over 270 authors. I think the final count was like 276 at the peak. And then everyone dropped out and the final number was around 33 listed on their website. That is a huge difference. Almost 250 authors less than predicted. And they made 0 announcements to the attendees. So the people who bought tickets before all of this happened had no idea that all of these authors dropped out. Kennedy Booknook reposted Brooke's post and said the premium ticket for the event was $400+ with taxes, and the swag bag is stickers. Romance Con is really living up to the con name. Yep. Crystal Hope posted from the event, telling people to stop by the Must Love Books podcast booth, which had some giveaways, free stickers, as well as a list of books by trans authors and or featuring trans characters for your TBR. Nell Stamp shared the photo Romance Con posted to their Instagram of merch available at the event. With our addition, you're telling me that Romance Con, owned by Mischief Management or allegedly still liable for, had enough money to print out swag but not to pay authors back who did not wish to return because of bad practices? Yep. And I will say, I think the little heart coin image is so cute. It's a shame that this is what it's tied to. So many people were really upset with what they actually saw and received at the event. Geekly Ever After said, hey, Romance Con, what have you done with all the money you're refusing to refund people with? Because you certainly haven't spent it on anything at the actual convention. Miles to Go Before I Read said, Romance Con has continued to show that they are a fucking joke. Cheap swag bags with a sticker sheet as a prize for spending $200+ on a ticket alone, and now they're hosting not even 40 authors? What a laughable convention. They're also transphobic as hell and refuse to refund authors and attendees who no longer wish to support their bigotry. Rose and Prose shared a TikTok which showed the contents of the swag bag. Oh, so Romance Con has cheap swag bags with a single sticker sheet and the cheapest possible lanyards and badges, despite charging a ton for tickets? Shocking. I'm shocked. Right. Wanderlusting Reader shared some pins that she wore at the event that say, I got Romance Conned and I'm only here because I didn't get my $175 back. It's so terrible. So she was prepared. She was ready to go. XOXOXO Ariel XOXOXO posted, I don't usually post stuff like this, but I'm honestly so disappointed. For the price of the ticket, this event was not it. There was barely any decoration. It felt like a last-minute setup. The author dinner, no organization at all. We were literally told to just go find an author to sit with. Like, what? Panels were all over the place. No structure, no clear schedule, and the swag bag, a single tea bag and a sticker sheet. I wish I was joking. I truly don't understand where the money went. It felt rushed, unorganized, and way below the standard for a romance-themed con. I know I'm not the only one feeling this way. I really hope they refund attendees or at least acknowledge how badly this was handled. TARDIS Free Library responded, the well-read damsels hosting events all weekend featuring many of the authors who pulled out of Romance Con. You may want to head there instead of back to the convention today. And Ariel says, that's definitely what I did today. I had such a great time. Jules Richardson said, especially since they're refusing refunds to the majority of attendees. Where did that money go? Elliot Durand writes, says they didn't refund author table fees or tickets for people who could no longer wanted to attend. Where the heck is that money? Crystal Hope says, just a little info on swag bags. It cost vendors/authors a sponsorship fee to put items in the swag bags. I believe it was a $500 fee and shipping in the items for the bags. Dollar amount may not be exact. L. Osman 13 responded, I'm sorry, what? Was that their own items? Like, not like the event purchased items in the author's vendors' names? They sent product they own and still had to pay a fee? And Crystal says, yes, if vendors, authors, sponsors sponsored the swag bag, they sent their own items in. I sponsored the bags last year, $500, and shopping in promotional postcards as marketing for the Must Love Books podcast. So on top of the $500, I paid for 1,200 postcards and paid to ship them to RomanceCon for them to stuff. Clearly this year, no one sponsored the swag bags. Osman responded, I'm sorry, I have 0 words. It took me a good 5 minutes to get my jaw off the floor. We, Lore Makers Fantasy Events, have never asked for authors or vendors to provide items plus pay more. We have always made it clear that if they would like to donate items to the swag bags, they were more than welcome to, but it was not necessary, and the swag bags had a set cost to us with or without donated items. Exactly, that is what a good event would do. If you throw a party, you don't expect your guests to come give you stuff that you then disperse back out on top of giving you your birthday gift. Obviously the situation is a little different, not a great metaphor, but I can't imagine. There should be a baseline of what you're able to provide in your swag bag, and then everything else on top of that gets donated is a bonus. I feel like that should be inherently accounted for in the cost of an event. $500. So in the previous year with all the books, they got 3 books and like 3 other items. That's like $3,000 from those ones specifically. Crystal Hope says, wow, the stark difference is just shocking to hear. After Romance Con and all the talk about various other cons with various other issues, I was worried about trying to vend/sponsor any other conventions. Romance Con was my first convention for Must Love Books podcast. I'm glad to hear there are still good cons out there. That is absolutely crazy. So the people are speaking up. Where did the money go? You can see Sparkly Diana shared photos of the Romance Con swag bag in comparison to the Meet Me on North swag bag. Meet Me on North is the event that the Well-Read Damsel started planning when all this backlash first started up. So they had roughly a month and a half-ish to actually plan out and get their alternative free event up and running. Sparkly Diana's post says, on the left, a swag bag that came with a $175 ticket that has been planned since last year. On the right, a free tote that came from a free event with twice as many authors that was put together in a month. That is a crazy difference. Amanda kindly posted on TikTok with multiple photos of what the event looked like.
I am home from day 1 of what would have been Romance Con, but instead just turned into a bookish day. So here's how it went down. When I saw a picture from my friend who got her swag bag this morning, she scanned her ticket, she went and she got her swag bag, she sent us that picture. I was livid, and so was everybody else in my group. And we decided that we were not going to go to Romance Con at all. We were not going to get our swag bag because that swag bag was not worth it. As a reference, this is what the swag bag looked like last year. You can see how large this bag was. I got so many of these bags because they had 3 books in them. They had a water bottle. They had bookmarks. They had annotation tabs. They had so much shit in this bag that it was absolutely worth the $170 that we paid for it, for the tickets. This is the bag that they handed out today.
That is an insane difference. Absolutely wild.
And yes, for scale, this is a hardcover book. You can fit a single hardcover book in that bag. Tabs, they had so much shit in this bag that it was absolutely worth the $170 that we paid for it, for the tickets. This is the bag that they handed out today. And yes, for scale, this is a hardcover book. You can fit a single hardcover book in that bag. And all that was in there was a sticker sheet and, in my friend's case, a cardboard coaster. Otherwise, it was like a bag of tea, like a Bigelow bag of tea. My face kind of says it all here. At one point, I even held up this bag because there were people behind me asking what the swag bags even looked like and how disappointed in the swag bags they were. And we all thought, based off of pictures, that this bag was bigger than it actually was. So I held it up. They were all just as outraged as I was. At one point, I was literally shaking the bag because I was so mad. And people remember me from that. So it's very interesting that I am now memorable, but I am also known as the spreadsheet bitch. So, you know, there's that. So while all of this is going down, I'm also getting messages on Discord basically saying, like, this is what's going on. This is what's falling apart. The panels apparently were very lovely, although they were very sparsely attended. For reference, my friend took this picture at one of the panels this morning. You can see how few people there are. And as a reference, last year when we attended, these, even on Friday morning, were full to the brim. Huge, full to the brim. They were on a stage on almost every single one of them. So they were elevated. Every single one of them was much better produced than this. There was no signage anywhere around here. There was no maps. There was nothing in terms of that. So it's like, where'd the money go? Where did the money go? My friend also took this picture of the signing hall, which this was crazy for me to look at, because do you see how much space is between these tables? That was not the case last year. These tables were right next to each other. There was like maybe just enough space for you to squeeze between those tables. That is how packed in there everybody was last year. And tomorrow, there's going to be even fewer people attending the signing hall. There's going to be even fewer authors because a bunch of authors that were attending today are attending Meet Me on North tomorrow. Yeah. So throughout the day, I'm seeing messages like the panels are wonderful. Everybody was super sweet. And all of the people that are attending these events are absolutely so friendly and so nice and so wonderful. And I would expect nothing less from these people. But like the event itself is just not working. They ran out of bingo cards. And there were not a lot of people that were attending this event, but they had touted that 2,100 people had purchased tickets and they were selling tickets more every day. So it's like, if you couldn't handle even the sparse amount of people that attended bingo, how are you going to anticipate 2,100 people attending? So they ran out of bingo cards, which, by the way, thank you so much to Rita for posting this. But this is the bingo card. She posted this to her stories. It's like an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. My husband was like, what, did they make this in fucking MS Paint or something? Like, you could have made something way nicer. You could have gone to a FedEx fucking office and had them printed on a nice cardstock, and it would have looked so much better. Like, where'd the money go? I did find out that the premium bags did come with books, but these are old titles. Like, last year, I got Olivia Dade's new book. I got Katie Roberts' new book. I got, like, good new books in my swag bags last year, and these people are getting old copies. Somebody actually got an ARC from a book that was published last year,
and that makes this even worse. They're giving away copies of books that they got for free potentially 2 years ago, depending on when the book came out last year. Absolutely mind-blowing.
Come on. I also did find out that the passes that were printed today or like given to people today, because they were so flimsy, the reason for that is because apparently they had like a transit issue with their original order. Like it wasn't going to arrive in time, really. But I am loving the snark that I'm reading in the Discord. Like that's probably my best part, my favorite part. Just loving the snark that I'm reading. So glad I paid $200 for a shitty little tote that I can't really put anything in. Yeah, love that. Love that.
That was Amanda's first video, and she did go on to post another update. And this video gives a much better idea of what the convention actually looked like.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
She then goes on to give a recap of what going to Meet Me on North was like. So again, that is the free event made kind of in protest of Romance Con.
It is like 9:30 on Saturday night. This is going to be a really quick video. I am not prepared mentally or vocally to give a wrap up of this weekend, but today was absolutely amazing. I attended the Meet Me on North book crawl today out in Wauwatosa, which was organized by the Well-Read Damsel. It had nothing to do with RomanceCon, and it was nothing short of amazing. First of all, I am now on Threads because apparently this is where all the drama is at, on Threads. But this post from Diana here is hilarious. On the left, a swag bag that came with a $175 ticket that had been planned since last year. And on the right, a free tote that came from a free event with twice as many authors that was put together in a month. And look at the size difference. Crazy. I also did end up comparing last year's tote with this year's tote. So you can just see the difference. Like, that is bonkers. And there's no gusset on this bag, whereas this one there is. So this bag gets big. This was the crowd at the Wauwatosa Library before it opened up for the book signing that was happening in like this room right over here. Natasha from the Well-Read Damsel, I love this girl so much, but her poor imposter syndrome, like, I took this photo just to show it to her because I was like, you thought nobody was going to come, ma'am. Shout out to my cousin. She was there. She was a volunteer. Love you, Mary. My girl Courtney looking in to the Well-Read Damsel. It took us about an hour and a half to get into the Well-Read Damsel in this line. And in this line, you guys, I cannot tell you how many people came up to me and was like, are you Amanda from TikTok? Are you the girl with the spreadsheet? Are you Amanda? Y'all, I have never been recognized in public before like that. And I have no words. The fact that I reached so many of you is absolutely amazing to me because RomanceCon did an amazing job of suppressing the content for like any negativity around the event. And the fact that I managed to reach some of you is amazing. Now I just wish that I had done more. I wish that I had been way more public about it. I wish that I had gone on Threads earlier. I wish that I had gone on Instagram, that I'd taken more to Facebook for this and really gotten this word out because, I'm just, hindsight, whatever. I'm just moving on, whatever. But like, these girls and friends, they have my heart. This was a wonderful day. Also, I'm about to show you what the masquerade ball currently looks like. So here you go. That's just a picture of it. It's actually a pretty decent turnout, but nowhere near what was there last year. So kind of crazy.
It kind of looks like a million lives. You can go ahead onto TikTok and take a look at the rest of Amanda's videos. She has apparently 20 out, at least when I screen recorded this, talking about from way back at the beginning of all the RomanceCon drama. You can see that she mentioned the spreadsheet. So I'm pretty sure that's the one that people started to keep track of which authors actually stepped away from the event so that people who were specifically going to meet author Y wouldn't be caught off guard that author Y actually wasn't there. Back on Thread, people are starting to ask, where did the money go? And throwing numbers behind that. Knit Eat Lift posted, so RomanceCon, you gonna fill us in on where all the money went? The bear doesn't cost $350,000 to rent. Cost of $2,100 general tickets sold. That doesn't include the vendor or author table fees you didn't refund. So where did the money go? You surely didn't spend it on signage or decor. There wasn't a $350,000 balloon arch to be seen. The DJ didn't cost you $350,000. You had a cash bar, so you definitely didn't pay for that. Where did the money go? Adriana's Books says, I kept saying this all weekend. Where did the money go? Paper name tags, like no decorations, the swag bags that were literally a sticker sheet and a single bag of tea. I almost lost it when it was a cash bar at the ball. I didn't expect alcohol to be 100% free, but you can't even give us soda? I totally agree. And what I want to know is, what is all these terrible book conventions' obsessions with giving a bag of tea? Almost every single bombed book con has just had a tea bag, which, if it was like a specialty blend or something, I love tea. I am all for tea, but you're giving me the cheapest of the cheap grocery store brand tea bags. Like I'm supposed to be grateful? I don't know. Thrift or Read said, shake my head, it was not good. They really put the con in convention. Susan79 says, I keep saying they deserve a class action lawsuit. This was the biggest con in so many ways. I so hope they get sued. Loader's Groove says, so a big portion of that money went to the venue, but aside, where did the rest go? I'm going to assume to help fund their other events. Knit Eat Lift says, this is what gets me because they put in an email, in an unlikely event we turn a profit, any profits will go towards a trans right organization. So I'm going to need those receipts. This is a really good point because they did promise that in one of their emails trying to appease all these authors who were dropping out. There was also that mystery trans kid summer camp that was never named. Evidence that they even planned the summer camp never came out into the public. Like it is so obvious, like we cannot take you at your word. Where are the receipts? Author Michelle Khalil says, it's wild that I'm seeing so many posts in the RomanceCon Facebook group with wordage like, thanks to all the authors who stayed because they care about their readers. As if the ones who dropped out to support their trans readers didn't do exactly that. That's passive aggressive AF, and we should not be doing that. How gross. How gross. Bex Talks a Book says, wow, what a slap in the face for us trans folks who spoke up and risked getting harassed and threatened, and also the authors who chose to put their allyship into action and started with the trans community. Some of these takes coming out from this con this weekend are wild. The Cuter BW says, my exact thoughts. I'm struggling not to laugh react to every single one. Girl, I would be up in there. Atlas Creed made an apt observation. It's like they all have the same playbook. They all need to face jail time for fraud. A Million Lives, Once Upon a Convention, RomanceCon, and Unalive Promotions. Library of Sarah Zane said, I'm glad RomanceCon's on the list so I don't have to say I'm the common denominator because AML, OUAC, and Unalive Promotions all have money from me. Yeah, what a shame. Knit Eat Lift made another post. I keep seeing RomanceCon attendees say, thank you for showing up for the readers, and that statement just grosses me out so hard. Then I'm told this literally happened at RomanceCon. I'm disgusted. This is some narcissistic manipulation if I've ever heard it. So this is from their Discord. Bright Knight said, Bridget is and was so amazing. RomanceCon staff did not give two cares about anyone. Cold Shoulder, they said, we're sorry for the people that didn't care about this or you guys. Critical Sheep says, wait, did they really say that? And Bright Knight says, they really did say that to me and one of my friends. Absolutely disgusting. You did something that upset a lot of people, and instead of actually trying to rectify the situation, you kept trying to redirect the blame and act like, oh, but it's not an issue because actually secretly nobody knew I was also doing these other things. Like that doesn't mean anything. If nobody knows you're doing it, you can't use that as evidence that, but actually I had different intentions the whole time. And then when, because of your actions, you lose authors, you're turning around and saying, but actually this is all their fault when you caused the problem in the first place. You were incapable of apologizing and rectifying the situation appropriately. But now, oh, but actually it's everyone else's fault that my own problems came to bite me in the butt. I hate stuff like this so much. The Taylor's granddaughter agreed with RomanceCon and said the authors didn't care about the readers. If they did, they would have attended. Knit Eat Lift says, good grief, tell me you know nothing about what happened without telling me. Andrea Anderson Author says, this is a troll account specifically created to post shit takes on book threads. A glance at their replies explains this. Don't give losers like this too much of your attention. Harmony Baby Doll says, it's almost like morals and being decent people was more important. God forbid you stick to any sort of moral guideline for your own life. Tashal Harrison shared a post that another author made saying, this is so disingenuous. We can see this post from author EDK where she says, RomanceCon was incredibly fun. I met so many lovely people, readers and authors alike. I was nervous before I got there, worries about all the hype that had been swirling, hype that didn't make sense to me. Why was this about HP? Why would we have a discussion about a different genre? An author who wouldn't be here in a million years and somehow make that the focus of a romance reader convention? Tell me you don't know anything about the situation at all without telling me. That's that first paragraph. Many readers came because they saw through it. They knew something else was happening. Something else. Like choosing to stick by your beliefs that all people are equal and deserve the same treatment. Shocking. Behind the scenes, the management company scrambled, as did the ever-lovely Melody from Park Books. When all the major sponsors pulled out, terrified of being called transphobes, the swag bag shrunk to nothing. But see, what this kerfluffle did was deplatform the community they were pretending to protect. They took gay, trans, poly, queer books out of the hands of open-hearted, amazing readers. There were people breaking down all of the receipts that the A Million Lives people posted showing that there were tens of thousands of dollars unaccounted for. You can't tell me this event that is so much larger somehow ran out of money? Get out of here. The people who started this should know that they actually hurt the queer community. These readers came to celebrate all books, ready to spend money, support authors who wrote books that made them feel seen and connected. And they bought tickets in good faith that those authors would attend. And it does seem that the real goal was to cancel the con, not help the readers or the trans community. The event went wonderfully from my perspective as an attending author. I loved everyone I met. Cool. I absolutely cannot stand people like this. And the ironic part of it is that this is specifically about the romance genre, which is known to have so many problematic subgenres. Like, you know, Reads with Rachel has done a ton of videos on these like Christian Amish romances that promote a lot of really terrible ideas about women and sexuality. There's nothing wrong with waiting till marriage or what have you, any sort of belief system you have around that. But to exclusively use that perspective to then put down other women who don't have that perspective, then things like billionaire romance, which I honestly think is capitalist propaganda. In response to this post being shared, author Mika James says, just saw that. Someone who probably got one of the free tables they were offering since we didn't get our money back. And she has no clue what the F went down for the con to fall apart, but it doesn't stop her from talking out of her ass because she had a good time, so it's all okay. Alicia says, it's funny how she keeps speaking for us, theys. Like, you're not even included in the harmed parties, so quit speaking for us. You're just fabricating all of this on behalf of people you won't allow yourself to listen to. Sit down. Jordana Blake Books says, terrible take. AI covers an opinion worth the paper it's written on. Author Carmen Lee says, the minimizing language used, kerfluffle and hype, and trying to turn the management company into the victims is very telling. I just read this book, came to Edie's defense by not even making a comment, posting a screenshot of her opinion elsewhere, where she says, no, it's not, right? So no, it's not disingenuous. It's her opinion on the event she attended. All attending authors had a multitude of terrors for still deciding to go to Romance Con because of the hundreds of dollars me, have already invested. Y'all can continue arguing amongst yourselves, but you can't take away what we who were actually there were able to achieve with what was left to author. You didn't achieve anything, though. You showed up and put shit on a table. Like, okay. Like, you achieved people being friendly with you. Some of the most beautiful friendships and new connections I've ever been on the receiving end of in my almost 2 years as an author. Beautiful friendships. You became friends with people you met for less than 2 days. I don't buy it. I don't think that's how friendship works in general, ever, unless you're 5 years old on the playground. EDK is one of the most genuine people I've ever met in life in the author community. I cannot let y'all attempt to steal this joy, because the entire month leading to Romance Con, I've been sick, never-ending nausea, losing weight and hair, and walked into Romance Con trembling. Like, is that what y'all want? And all I can think is, like, that is not a healthy response to people boycotting something. Like, the cognitive dissonance. If you believed Romance Con did nothing wrong, you would walk in, no issue. You would not have any problem walking into an event that you did not think did anything wrong. But instead, you walked into an event afraid of what people were going to think about you because you knew the event was wrong. You knew what they did was wrong. And, you know, there were multiple authors who said, I don't want to go based on what's happening, but unfortunately, financially, that is not feasible for me, letting you know. And people were okay with it. People were like, we get it. You can't make that financial sacrifice. No one's holding that against you. Author Carmen Lee says, you know what? I rarely get spicy on here, but Tasha is dead on and I have shit to say. The condescension and smugness in the original OP's replies reeks of whiteness in a way that is why I'm very particular about who in the queer community I break bread with. Yeah, people don't care about things until it happens to them. We see it all the time, and it is absolutely a failing. Carmen continues, there have been events behind the scenes I've been invited to and people who have reached out that I've been polite but distant with because I don't know if you're trustworthy or if your brand of community will leave me at risk of being a casualty when you decide your way is the only right way to handle things, namely dealing with obias and isms. I am an author who pulled out of Romance Con. I made that clear. I also understood that there were folks who couldn't for financial reasons, and you won't find me shaming anyone for that, especially not in this hellhole economy. But to suggest that those of us who pulled out are mean girls is where you got me, and lots of others who are still crawling out of the hole mischief management left us in, effed up. If you couldn't pull out of Romance Con, I get it, really and truly, because if not for my day job, I'd be hurting even more than I am now. But if you're going to use some kind of bullshit radical activism to prove you're better than those who pulled out the kerfluffle, then you can F off into the sun. Now let me go back to writing these words. Got my Libra scale all off balance and shit. Real Phoenix writes, Sin author says, personally, I get tired of people like this claiming that the trans community was hurt by what happened. She doesn't speak for us. Did she ask a trans person? I personally felt joy that so many authors stood up for what was happening and pulled out of the con. That felt like support for our community. As a transgender man, I can get my books into readers' hands without capitulating to BS like what was happening at a Romance Con. Fringe Book Reviews shared, "We were standing in line at the Well-Read Damsel, and a group of girls was so angry that authors couldn't bother showing up for the readers who deserved their presence because, like, RomanceCon shouldn't even be canceled because J.K. Rowling is too big to be impacted by a silly little boycott, and A Rose in Chains wasn't even that Harry Potter-esque anyways." People keep saying this, like, I never would have known it was fan fiction. That's the point. That's the point. You never would have known, and they chose to let you know in all of their advertising. They changed the book just enough to publish it, and then wink, wink, nudge, nudged it into popularity. It would be one thing if this took, if like years after publication, oh, actually, this was my Twilight fanfiction once upon a time. And then to have the gall to show up to the protest event. You're mad people protested, but you're going to take advantage of their planning and the money they sunk into this to make sure people were still happy that weekend. Get out of here. Kennedy Book Nook made another post. Gonna say it at least once more because it needs to be said. RomanceCon and Mischief Management don't deserve any positive commentary. If you attended and had a good time, it was in spite of them, not because of them. Mischief Management decided not to respond to valid criticism from the trans community and went with a, if we ignore it, it'll go away approach. When that didn't work, they stuck their heads in the sand, watched as the event fell apart, and let attendees, authors fend for themselves. Two things can be true. You can have a good time at an event, and that event can be a failure with the management company being the responsible party at the same time. I will not judge people who enjoyed themselves. I will judge people who blame authors or readers for what the event ended up being. Needless to say, it seems like the majority of attendees were unhappy with the experience they were provided with. And what cracks me up is that RomanceCon has already updated their website with one positive quote. They got one positive review and they just plastered it on the front of their website. You can't see anything else with information for the 2026 event. No mention of who would even be running this event, considering the fact that Mischief Management supposedly has nothing to do with this anymore. And they couldn't even alter this photo so the background was white that matches the website. Even just airbrush a line across the top so it blends in. Jesus Christ. So who even knows who would be trying to run the event next year? Because they're not, they're clearly not sharing that information. This revelation was from back towards the middle end of August. Sparkly Diana shared that RomanceCon announced it would have a reverse signing. I have feelings about it. On one hand, I love the idea of showing authors some love, but on the other hand, there's so much the event management company should be doing to make the attendees feel loved for showing up to an event that is barely a whisper of what it was supposed to be. Christian Beverly responded, "Yep, they're just trying to fill slots at this point because they have refused to cancel." Frozen Prose shared Diana's post saying, "Mischief Management planning a little event within RomanceCon where readers, aka attendees who paid for a ticket to meet 230 plus authors, get to reverse sign for the handful of authors who haven't dropped out is wild. The audacity." Danica Nava asked, "What is a reverse signing? Like an eraser?" That's terrible. Frozen Prose said, "Apparently attendees get to write thank you letters to the authors attending. That is crazy." Courtney Clark Michael said, "What the F is a reverse sign? Like they all sign a card saying we love you for 30 authors, like some sort of card for a departing coworker?" Inimitable Books said, "After what happened at Sinners and Stardust, wouldn't an event not want to encourage fans having more access to authors?" Exactly. Yeah. Looking at RomanceCon's Instagram, you can see that the reverse signing was hour 3:45 to 4:45 on the 6th. So the second day of the convention. Crazy. Well, it will be interesting to see if RomanceCon 2026 ever actually reaches fruition. It is shocking how little was actually done for the event, given the fact that they received so much money from tickets, they would not refund people. There was one author who died and her family was begging for refunds, and I never found a resolution to that on Threads. Absolutely crazy. Well, that is all I have for now. I will see you next time.